In this short video, I want to share on the importance of reading Genesis faithfully. Now, the book of Genesis is an ancient book. We must remember the Bible is written for us, but not to us. The Bible is from God. God is the authority, and God inspired a human author and disclosed to the human author. So what God disclosed and inspired the human author carries the authority of God. And when the author faithfully and verbatimly communicate this to the people, and when the people hear everything as God communicated and intend, it carries authority. But the author and the people, they belong to an ancient culture in an ancient world, which have its own ancient writings and symbols. So in order for us to read the Bible faithfully, we must be familiar with the ancient world. One of the very important points we must take note is that the original audience fully understood what God was communicating to them through the human author or orator. It don't make sense that what God is communicating to the people and they do not understand what he is talking about to the human author. So it's very important for us to take note. The original audience fully understood what was communicated in the ancient writings, in the ancient symbols, in the ancient world. So God inspired a human and God disclosed the author, the human vessel. He communicated to the original audience and they fully understood what the author is talking about and they fully understood what God is communicating. Because they belong to the ancient world, they are the insiders to the ancient world of culture, of writings, of symbols. So to them, it's something that they are familiar with, they know, and what is commonly communicated among the people. Present modern world, there are dangers of us reading into the text with our modern mindset and modern lenses. These have created many straw man arguments that is confusing and misleading. For example, the book of Genesis is about origin, but we must ask the critical question, origin of what? What is the writer talking about? Now, if we look in Genesis chapter 2, we realize that the author is actually talking about the origin of human civilization and not about the origins of Homo sapien. So it's very important in order not to read into the text from a modern mindset and modern perspective, we have to be careful what is the text saying, especially in the original language that it is written. So what is the text saying? We cannot say or we cannot claim, or we cannot refer what the text is not saying, what the text is not referring to, or what the text is not claiming. We have to examine what is the intent of the author in what he's talking about. So the importance of context, okay, at the end of it is still context, 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 that will lead us to accurately discern what is the text and the author is saying. We must remember we are outsiders to the ancient world. We are not familiar with the ancient world, and therefore, when we read the Bible, it is very dangerous for us in the modern world to bypass the ancient world way of seeing and understanding the Bible. For us to read the book of Genesis faithfully, realizing that we are outsiders to the ancient world, we have to be familiar with the ancient world. Because God inspired the writers and the audience understood then, there and then in their ancient world. But here in the modern world, we must find out what the writer is telling there and then and apply for us in our here and now. That will enable us to be a faithful readers of the book of Genesis. In order to be familiar, in order to be faithful, we realize that to understand the ancient world of Genesis chapter 1 to 11 in particular, that it is multidisciplinary. You need to be familiar with the whole biblical theology of the Bible, the whole Bible, not Old Testament, New Testament. You must be familiar with ancient Near Eastern worldview and the spirit world in their there and then. You must have some firm ideas of ancient Hebrew language and grammar, and you must able to some familiarity with ancient civilization. Then also, how do the writer write? The literary arts and skill of ancient writers, right? And the worldview of ancient Israelite as far as they see cosmology. You must be familiar with biblical archaeology because there are many evidence that have been dug out. You must be able to be familiar with some things of science in the geology, in the Ice Age, in the Holocene, in the Neolithic Age, etc. And you realize that to understand the book of Genesis, it is at times multi-layered. Now, for continued learning, I will recommend Dr. John H. Wharton's book, particularly The Lost World of Genesis 1, and he wrote an entire series on the Lost World of. And there are in the YouTube many of Dr. Wharton's talks and presentation. And also do a search in the internet, on Google, just type in Dr. John H. Wharton and Genesis, and you can see the whole full resources available for our continued learning. So thank you very much for your patience.